All right. I would like to welcome everybody for coming out in the snow and the cold that's out there today. Maybe many more people are watching online from the warmth of their homes. I'd like to call to order the Wednesday, January 5th, 2022 Town Council Work Session at 6:01 p.m. Roll call of members. All members are present with the exception of Mr. Cambry. Do I have an approval of the agenda? So moved. All in favor? Aye. All right, council member liaison and commission reports. I'll start this way. Nothing to report. Okay. Nothing. All right.
Nothing really to report, but I just wanted to say thanks to Public Works. I've heard some good things about them taking care of the roads and everything over the snowstorm. So just want to say a shout out to them for that. Thank you.
I have a report as liaison to the nonprofit NGOs and other organizations in town. It's distributed for your information on your seats, and I will be emailing it to council members so that they'll have an electronic copy. Coming to the table, Colonial Beach VA is hosting or coordinating an MLK Martin Luther King Weekend of Service, January 15th through the 17th. You can volunteer or register your service event with me or on the Facebook page. The James Monroe Birthplace Visitor Center, Bucky Dorr, is seeking volunteers to help clean up the abandoned African-American cemetery. She said this would be a good project for volunteers during MLK Weekend of Service. She says she has the authority to authorize such cleanup, and you can contact her at 804-224-0459 if you're interested in leading or volunteering for such a project. The Colonial Beach Community Foundation has new officers. Michelle Enderridden is the president. Dr. Peter Farney is the vice president of administration. Eric Nelson is the vice president of member engagement. Ann Swope is the secretary. Marcia Feldman is the treasurer. And they would like to thank Treasurer Tom Savage, who's been their treasurer for years and is stepping down from that office. They want everybody to know that a second Love Golf Cart ornament order will arrive in February. These sold out at Christmas, but you can reserve yours via email at info@cbcommunityfoundation.org. And they'd like to thank Tom Tilt, who spearheaded this project, and remind everybody that the sales support the foundation's Community Crisis Fund for local food pantries. Their beautification grant applications will close at the end of January. And their first event for 2022 will be the wine and chocolate pairing event near Valentine's Day. So watch for those details. I had no report from the civic groups, the museum, the Artist Guild. Downtown Colonial Beach continues to work with the town chamber and others towards the Rural Community Development Initiative grant of $30,000 to improve wayfaring signage. The VCU market analysis report update. A clothing store was the most requested retail boutique. They also recommended collaboration among businesses for packages to attract visitors. An initiative is being worked on by Downtown Colonial Beach and the Chamber of Commerce. Joni Millward has joined Sally Adams and Joyce Reimer on the Osprey Festival Committee. Remember, the festival is on the 9th. And it will include some special guest, ornithologist Mike Callahan, and Dr. Alan Poole, the internationally recognized authority on ospreys, will be presenting via webinar. The committee invites all local organizations to participate. The Guadalupe Free Clinic needs volunteers. They need pharmacy technicians, pharmacists, and Spanish speakers who can interpret at the clinic on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Please contact Beth Collins, bcollins@guadalupefreeclinic.org. And they didn't put that in, but you only have to volunteer. I mean, you don't have to volunteer a lot. One day a month would help them a great deal. Mike Fitzpatrick will be updating us on the Chamber of Commerce and his presentation. Colonial Beach Kids was a rainy but successful event at Custom Tees Motorsports in December, with hundreds of kids being served in drive-through Christmas Wonderland. And from the churches, St. Mary's and Little Zion plan to participate in the MLK Weekend of Service. Watch for details. And that's all I have.
Okay. I just want to wish everybody a happy new year, since this is our first meeting of 2022. I'd also like to update that we're responding to the Northern Neck Planning District Commission Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy for the region. The chamber and Mr. Nelson from the foundation have submitted comments, as well as Joyce Runner from downtown Colonial Beach, and we're all those comments are coming together, but we're also writing a cover letter to kind of highlight the points of that. And so I think council has a copy of this. Is that right? Yeah, everybody has a copy of that at the top. It's very dense trying to fit it on one page. But we're going to add everything together as well to respond to that. There is a draft for from Delegate Ransom to amend the charter, and so we'll be moving forward with that. And then I'd also like to take a moment to recognize why I've put up a very large banner inside of Town Center. Our Facebook viewers can't see it from this camera angle, but on the side wall, we have a banner that states our vision this is the vision statement from our adopted comprehensive plan. And it says Colonial Beach is an attractive, historical beach town committed to family, business, the arts, and a healthy quality of life. And part of putting that up there as a reminder to us as we operate in this room and as other commissions and committees operate in this room is to keep our eye on that vision. And that vision statement is largely to thank for two members of our community who have stepped up to serve and were a part of the original writing of the vision statement. And that is Miss Maureen McCabe, who is now retiring from the Planning Commission after 10 years of service there. And also to Mr. Cabry, who is has had to move from Colonial Beach for his health, but served on both our Planning Commission and as Vice Mayor to this town council. And so sort of in recognition to their service and what they've done, but as a reminder to the work that we do in this room and we continue to do to keep that our eyes set on the prize, sort of, that vision may indeed be what 2030 looks like here in Colonial Beach, which is the concept. So just a quick round of applause for both of them and their dedicated service. And I'm going to present Ms. McCabe. I'll take it to her. We have just the recognition. All right, that's all the updates I have at this time. Presentations. All right. Read the proclamation for Martin Luther King Jr. Whereas the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. dedicated his life to the civil rights movement and became one of the greatest leaders, and whereas devoting his life for justice and equality for people of all races through nonviolent means, and whereas his leadership led to the establishment of federal laws prohibiting discrimination and extending constitutional rights for all of humanity, and whereas Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. believed a life of service was the greatest gift and has said everybody can be great because everybody can serve. And whereas in his 39 years, Dr. King dedicated a life of service that was able to positively change the future of this country and the world around it. And whereas each of us can serve and contribute to our community to continue the efforts that Dr. King committed his life service to. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Town Council of Colonial Beach, proclaim January 17th as Martin Luther King Day of Service in the town of Colonial Beach and encourage our community to consider what Dr. King considered one of life's most important questions. What are you doing for others? And I look forward to the event. Next up is the Economic Development Committee, Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and council members and staff. I'm very happy to be here tonight. This is actually like the 1-year anniversary of the Economic Development Committee, and Councilwoman Dr. Karen Sullivan asked if I would take this opportunity to update you on what we've been up to over the past 12 months and give you a look ahead at what we're planning for 2022. So thank you for that opportunity. So to start off with tonight, in terms of the agenda, I'll just give you a little bit of background on who the team members are, what our objectives and mission statement were. Then I'll move into what we accomplished in 2021. And then what I'd like to spend most of the time on tonight is talking about what the 2022 goals are, because I think it involves everybody in this room and support and all of us working together to accomplish that. So first off, in terms of the committee itself, so you see the members there on the left-hand side, and we've got a really good group. I think these names are probably very familiar to hopefully everybody on the council and staff and many of the citizens here in town. We are actually recruiting another member for 2022. Surrey has been moved more into a consulting role, and Duke Dotson has he's attended almost every single meeting, but he said he would prefer not to be an actual member of it. He'd like to just participate and give his guidance and whatnot to us. So we'll be looking for another member to join our team in 2022. And then you can see the associate members there. So Councilwoman Sullivan is our representative for the council. We have both Joyce Reimer and Jeff Crook from downtown Colonial Beach who actively come to our meetings and participate. Same thing with Vicki Luna from the Planning Commission. So we actually have a group of about 10 of us that are consistently meeting every month and have been very active in what took place in 2021. Okay, next up. I presented this to you last year about this time, might have been February when I presented it, I think. And we did develop a mission statement and what our objectives were. I don't need to read this whole thing, but I think it's very much aligned with what I'm seeing on the wall here tonight in terms of what we're all working and striving towards, which is to make Colonial Beach a successful business and arts and friendly and safe place for our community and for our citizens and for visitors who come to visit us. I mean, that's the essence of what we're trying to support through our economic development efforts. If you move to the next slide. So the objectives, and I will maybe go quickly through these, but because I think when you see what the accomplishments were, we did focus a lot on what our objectives were for 2021. And so encouraging economic well-being and expansion of the commercial businesses. And when you see what we accomplished, I'll definitely, highlight some of the things that were impacted there. The second point is this notion of collaboration. And I've got to say, in my 24 years of being in Colonial Beach, I feel like the momentum has turned here, and we are working so collaboratively with the alliance of bringing all of the NGOs together in town, the council, and the staff members. I feel like we really, truly are all pointing north. We're pointing in the same direction and working towards a lot of common objectives. So that's been a big part of what the Economic Development Committee has been trying to do, is bring together the voices of a lot of different people. Responsibly assisting and developing properties within the town in an effort to improve the aesthetics. And this is where I think our collaboration with Downtown Colonial Beach and the town and with the Dotson Group, really kind of highlight that. Developing and implementing a plan to proactively recruit new businesses and developers. I'll talk a little bit about some of the new businesses that were opened this year in Colonial Beach and the role that we've played there. Reviewing the town ordinances and seeing what we can do to make Colonial Beach a business-friendly community. And I think I work with the town manager and with the mayor, and I can give some specific examples of what we did in that area. Evaluating opportunities to enlarge the town's footprint, and so that we can maybe expand our tax base, and there's some efforts going on there, and coordinating efforts to support the newly adopted comprehensive plan. And as I mentioned, Vicki Luna and the Planning Commission have been very engaged with what our activities have been. And I feel like everything that we're doing is in direct support of what the comprehensive plan is that was adopted by this council. So those were our objectives. Now let's talk a little bit about the accomplishments. So I started off by initiating a monthly meeting. So all of us, and there's been exceptional attendance of this, like 10 or 12 of us with invited guests at every single meeting, all 12 months of this year. We did not miss a single meeting, and we got a lot done, as you'll hear. I think we've worked, I worked really carefully with the mayor and with the town manager on the incentive plan update to our town code, and that has now been adopted by the town council, and we're using that now as part of our incentive marketing materials when we're talking to potential new businesses coming into town to say, here's what our incentives are to consider opening a business in Colonial Beach. We researched and presented commercial and townwide broadband solutions, and this was done in conjunction with the foundation. And that a fairly extensive report was written and presented to the council and given to the town manager. And I think there's ongoing activities here to see what we can do for commercial broadband expansion as well as townwide expansion for our visitors. We supported the opening of 6 new businesses here in 2021, and I think many of the members of the Economic Development Committee have continued to reach out to meet with these people to see how they're doing and to make sure they're aware of the incentive plan code and things that we can do to support their success over their first year or two in business. Myself and some others on the committee joined and participated in the Virginia Economic Development Association, so VEDA. I've attended, I can't tell you how many meetings and workshops I've attended in the past 12 months. And I think what that's done is it's created a fair amount of awareness of who Colonial Beach is. It's starting to put us on the map because this is a Commonwealth-wide or statewide group that comes together. There's usually about 150 people attending these workshops and meetings from all over the state of Virginia. And I feel like I've made so many great contacts. The mayor and town manager have been able to participate on a couple of these, and we've been able to have some visibility. And so people are starting to sit up and take notice of who Colonial Beach is. And I think within Region 6, which we're the part of Region 6 in Virginia here, that I feel like those connections have really been strengthened. I know who the leaders are throughout Region 6 from Fredericksburg down to Kilmarnock, and we're starting to have some good contacts there. And I have submitted, as you all probably have seen, multiple multi-page reports to the council and town staff here on the outcome and suggestions from these meetings. The other major one that I participated in is Go Virginia. And this is an amazing opportunity, I think, for Colonial Beach. This is a group that really gets together with the sole purpose of talking about what are the economic opportunities and what are the financial opportunities for towns like Colonial Beach to be able to capture Virginia dollars. And again, this has been something that we've identified and I think taken action on a number of very significant grant opportunities, including our relief funds that we got, our big one, that was part of some of the things associated with this. And also, again, multiple reports on Go Virginia have been submitted to the council. The other one that I'll just briefly mention is Comrel. So this is a cooperative group that gets together that's commercial and military for a community. And so this is both Dahlgren and Indian Head, and we participate in those meetings as well. So it's a chance for us to be able to partner with these military institutions and look for opportunities for economic development within our community. Okay, next page. As I think many of you know, we recently received the report from Virginia Commonwealth University. This was a group of graduate students and that came to Colonial Beach, spent multiple months, and the Economic Development Committee was very active in helping to set up a lot of the interviews with the business community here in town and really giving them a lot of background and information. And I think that's been a very helpful report that actually solidifies a lot of the thoughts that we all had, but now makes it a very professional output that we can now take action on with some of their suggestions. We also have been participating with Mary Washington University in a business education program, and this is for our existing businesses here in town, where we've offered workshops that help educate them on what to do during COVID, what to do with expanding their potential for online marketing and maybe some backdoor kind of activities. So instead of just their storefront, they're able to go onto the internet and promote their products and whatnot as well. So Mary Washington offers this free of charge and is working with us to help our businesses here in town. We've also recently initiated discussions with Curry Roberts, who's the president of the Fredericksburg Regional Alliance. And this is a really nice connection for us because he's been kind of focused more on the Fredericksburg, King George, Stafford kind of area. And now I think he's very active in that Go Virginia that I mentioned. So he became aware of Colonial Beach. And now he's really starting to say, hey, maybe I should start looking at Colonial Beach as part of this alliance, and really wants to help us out too. So that will, I think in terms of our ongoing activities for attracting potential businesses to Colonial Beach from Fredericksburg, he's the perfect connection for us for that. The other thing that I'm really excited about this is Shannon Kennedy's the president of Rappahannock Community College, and she's come and met with, again, the mayor and the town manager and Councilwoman Robertson and myself. And we have, I think, a nice opportunity here to partner with RCC to expand what some of the opportunities are for our high school students here. So the whole concept here is that RCC would potentially bring some programs locally to Colonial Beach that would enable our high school students that maybe aren't going to go beyond to a four-year college or whatnot, to get some training and whatnot coming out of high school so that they could move into qualified jobs and be able to stay in the region. And as part of that effort, I've personally been working with a lot of the tradespeople here in town, electricians, plumbers, contractors, builders, that are very excited about this concept of a apprenticeship program where we identify high school students and can potentially help them to get involved with something that's of interest to them, get classes through RCC and be under the wing of somebody like a Jay Camp or a Byron Rawlings here. And when they graduate, have a job where they can stay in Colonial Beach and be a great asset to our business community here, but also help the up and coming employment opportunities for them in Colonial Beach. So that's a very exciting one that I think we're pretty passionate about. We've also been, as I mentioned, very active with the Alliance team. We've opened up discussions with Westmoreland County, Northern Neck Tourism, Planning, Economic Development. And as the mayor mentioned, we gave a lot of input into what the strategic plan is for the Northern Neck here. And I think, again, we're finally starting to have some connections take place between us and these other groups, and we're not this island here in Colonial Beach. We're actually going to be able to take advantage of these relationships. I did write a job description for an economic development director. I'll talk about that as part of my goals in a minute. But and we participated in this reception at Riverboat that was representatives from Charles County, and these were like state senator, Congress people that came over, met at Riverboat with what's going to happen with some of the expansion of the gambling opportunities there. And as a result of that, and following up with them, we've been able to forge a bit of a relationship with Charles County Tourism. And I've been able to make some connections there. We now have our tour guides and stuff at that visitor center right before the bridge, and started to have some dialogue with them there as well. Active participation in town-sponsored the strategy session that we put together, and that's been ongoing with this rural community development initiative. So there's a lot happening there in terms of, again, all of us coming together and working. And then we have developed a toolkit that I feel like is a nice professional tool. The Downtown Colonial Beach put together a beautiful, beautiful brochure. We've augmented that with like the incentive plan and some other things that the Chamber and the Economic Development Committee have put together, so that we have a prospective either business or developer coming here in town, we can actually lay out and talk to them in a very professional manner and show them why they should be thinking about Colonial Beach to open up their business or think about doing some development. So those are some of the highlights from 2021. So this has been the busiest dang job I think I've ever had for a volunteer in my life, but it's been a lot of fun. So that's what we did. Now I'd like to talk to you about what we'd like to do in 2022. So we'd like to continue on the path that we're on and lead efforts to recruit at least 5 to 10 new businesses here in town. We're in discussions with at least 5 or 6 currently, and it's only January, that we are really trying to entice to be part of like the Dotson development opportunities that are going on commercially along the boardwalk and whatnot. So we're very involved in that. I'm going to talk about this in a minute. This initiative food truck court development. This is the thing that I'm most passionate about, and if I do nothing else in 2022, this is what I want to do. I've been working with Bobby Duke here on some thoughts around that. So as I said, support the Dotson phase 2 and 3 through our efforts to attract new businesses. This apprenticeship program that I talked about with the high school and Rappahannock Community College, we're going to make that a goal. Continue to expand our awareness through participation in VITA, Go Virginia, and the Comrel workshops that we've been attending. And one of the things I think would be very helpful, and this is probably for the town manager, is to help us create a list of potential available property that could be developed here. So create an inventory list so that we have people that are coming in to Colonial Beach and they want to think about building a business or building a brick and mortar kind of thing. Where can we direct them? What can we do? And so having this inventory list, whether it's town-owned or privately owned properties, that we could be very comprehensive about what's available and be able to talk to them about what the options are for them. This is something brand new that I just became aware of actually over the holidays. So capitalizing on the new Hubzone designation. When I started a year ago, Westmoreland County was not part of the Hubzone designation. We did not have it. And unbeknownst to me, we now have it again. And King George lost theirs. And that was completely new news. And it's a huge opportunity for Colonial Beach because King George, a lot of what's happened in King George around Dahlgren and whatnot is a result of their Hubzone designation. I'm not trying to throw them under the bus or anything like that, but it is an opportunity for Colonial Beach to make sure that we capitalize on this. This and that heritage, the national heritage that we have now been designated historic. I'm sorry, I forget the name of it, but Rob Whitman got for us, combining this Hubzone and this National Historic Heritage. These are 2 new opportunities that Westmoreland County and particular Colonial Beach have not had before. So we want to make sure we work on that. Expand the Mary Washington workshops and really get more participation from the current business owners here in town so that we can help them be successful in growing their businesses. And this is the one that I want to spend a second on. So work with the town government to create an economic development commission. So right now we're a committee that works underneath the Chamber of Commerce. So I'm on the board of directors of the Chamber of Commerce, and I chair this committee underneath the chamber. I think if we could elevate this committee to a commission similar to the Planning Commission, it would actually go a long way towards the credibility that Colonial Beach has when we're participating in VITA and Go Virginia and Comrel and some of these other workshops that are out there and in these organizations. And I really would like to help justify and use that job description to think about the council approving a full-time economic development director that would oversee not just economic development, but tourism and grant writing. I've learned a lot from participating in these VITA workshops, and the towns and cities that I see that are really successful have put this into an office under town management, and they've combined the tourism and the development and the grant writing all together under one thing. And just to be clear, I'm not the person I don't want to be the economic development director for the town. As much as I'd love to be, I'm going to Belize for 6 months a year. But I want to help get this set up and going. And the commission or the committee that we have created, all the people that are on this committee right now really would support this effort and continue on and be part of supporting this economic development director. So I hope that you will consider that, and I'll be happy to work with you on making that happen. And then finally, work with the town, county, and prospective developers to find some kind of a solution for workforce housing. Because one of the resounding messages and themes I've heard from attending all of these workshops is the importance of workforce and how hard it is to retain people, to attract people. And right now, Colonial Beach has an issue with not having housing that is affordable for our workforce. They have to go out. And I think we have to really think about that as a goal for 2022 of looking at options for being able to retain our high school students that maybe go into these trades and be able to keep them here in the beach and not have them move away because they can't afford to live here. So that's maybe an ambitious goal, but it's something I think would like to focus on. Okay, so that's a long list of 10 goals for this year, but I think we can do it. All right, so the one thing else about, and this is my final thing, I promise. I know I've gone on a bit, but this food truck court vision, where I have a place in Belize, this is what we go here all the time. This is a really fun and amazing place. It's a collection of 7 or 8 food trucks, a fun venue with palm trees and music, and it is like the hangout place, and it is fantastic. And I think Colonial Beach is the absolute perfect venue to have a successful operation like this. I've talked a little bit to the town manager, I've talked to the mayor, I've talked to Bobby Duke, we've had a meeting with some of the food truck owners here in town. Everybody is super excited about this concept, and we can do it. And there's a compelling reason for this. With the Dotson project going on, we have to be able to find a solution for the food trucks that have been on the boardwalk and be able to help find a new location for them. If we were to, and I'll put it out there, I know this isn't vetted, so this is Mike Fitzpatrick talking, but on the backside of Town Hill there, down by the boardwalk in front of Riverboat, right along the boardwalk there is what I consider to be a really good location where we could pour some pads, bring in electricity, bring in some water, have 7 or 8 permanent food trucks there year round, and be able to have 4 or 5 additional spots for the seasonal and transient food trucks that come in during the summertime and for festivals and things like that. And I think we could work with the permanent food truck vendors to convince them that they could do a round robin and somebody could stay open on a Monday night so that there's someplace to go besides Domino's Pizza on Monday night or whatever, and be able to offer something. I have talked to every single person, or my committee has, that is associated with food trucks, and everyone that we have talked to says, where do I sign? Sign me up. I want to be part of this. I even went over, if you guys remember that Indian restaurant, Bollywood, that was over by Dahlgren. So I know that guy. He lived in Colonial Beach for years, and I'm friends with him. I went over to his place, which is now in La Plata. It's like on the north end of La Plata. I had lunch there the other day, and I said, I'm going to be presenting this. Let me tell you about this. And he said, oh my God, I've been looking for a place to put a food truck so that we can have an auxiliary place. And I said, you haven't been to Colonial Beach in a while, have you? He said, no, I haven't. And I said, come back. We want to show you. He goes, he gave me his name. He said, I want to open a food truck in Colonial Beach after what I talked to him. So imagine if we now had an Indian restaurant, food truck here in town too. This could really be great for the town. It'll bring revenue. It'll satisfy a lot of unmet needs here. And if we can all work together, we can absolutely make this happen in 2022. Okay, so that's it. That's the end of my presentation. So thank you all for listening to me. I know it was a lot, but a lot has happened and we've got a lot of work ahead of us for the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
I just want to thank you, Mike, personally. I know how hard you've worked, and when you put it all down on paper, it really shines, and your enthusiasm and you're going above and beyond to get involved and getting us involved with these other organizations is just incredible. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
I want to echo exactly what Dr. Sullivan said. You can see also how much time this takes to really take it seriously in economic development. I think it's a strong way to advocate for a director. I'd like to, voice that I continue to hope that this is also a director of Main Street, because I'd like us to couple those things together.
Yep.
Kind of get two things for our buck on that. And I hope we can make all your dreams come true in all the priorities. But I think this is a wonderful vision. I think it definitely is in line with the vision the town has as a whole. It's not my vision or any one member's, but the community's vision. So thank you so much. Yes.
And if we can get enough food trucks, Robin and I won't have as much trouble chasing people with grills off the beach.
Get out of here. Well, there may be more problems with dogs. I don't know.
All right. Thank you all. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Oh, can you drop some of the toolkit packages that you have at town hall so that we can have them available? And also, don't forget, we are also in an enterprise zone, not just the hub zone. So enterprise and hub, when you're telling people, I think I qualify under hub zone, my business does, and I'm gonna go get registered. And you're absolutely right. Contracts, federal contracts, 3 to 5% of them have to go to hub zone qualified businesses. And so when we were not in the hub zone any longer, which isn't really our say, we don't get to say I want to be in the hub zone or not. It's a qualifier that the state does. But when we were not in it, we were not able to attract businesses that support federal contracts. So that is a huge change in the dynamic to supporting Dahlgren and other military installations, but all federal contracts. And we know there's a lot of federal dollars that are coming down the pipeline right now. So this is an opportunity for businesses that support federal contracts to grow. And but I think that's a really smart thing to hone in on. Okay. Next up is citizen input. I got 2 people signed up. Mr. Nelson, you are first.
Thank you. Good evening. Eric Nelson, 1321 Lossing. First, as a resident, I want to thank Public Works. Thanks so much for the very good job that they did in clearing the streets. I've been talking to friends elsewhere in the area, and no one has clean streets the way we do in Colonial Beach. They've done such a good job, as they always do. So I just want to thank Public Works for that. Secondly, I want to talk a little bit about a couple of things that Dr. Sullivan brought up, which is about the foundation. As she mentioned, I am stepping down from being president of the foundation. I've been doing it for a couple of years now, and I think it's a good time to sort of pass the baton to Michelle Indereden, who is a really terrific person, and I was hoping she would be here this evening so I could formally pass the baton to her, or figuratively pass the baton to her. But she was not able to make it tonight, but you'll be seeing her But don't fret, you won't stop seeing me. I will still be coming here. I'm also going to be the vice president of member engagement. So for those of you who are not members of the foundation yet, you'll be hearing from me. But I also wanted just for a second to reflect on the past several years that I've been president. And I want to say that Mike's enthusiasm is infectious, and I think it parallels a lot of what the foundation has been doing over the past several years. The foundation has really turned its trajectory into really like a very upward sloping line, and we have become such an important and valuable part of the community, filling in voids where there was needs. And so I just want to talk for a second about that. Our accomplishments, I won't go into the laundry list because I don't think I don't have any notes in front of me for one thing, but also he did such a good job of reflecting about what the Chamber's Economic Development Committee has done. But we have been working a lot in a lot of different areas, trying to, again, enhance our role in the community, from giving out gift cards at food pantries to supporting other organizations, to raising money for towns beautification, and to lots and lots of other things that were not being done in the past, but really support the needs of the community. So, and I also want to say that I do strongly, personally, and the foundation strongly supports the work of the Chamber's Economic Development Committee. And with the personal background that I have in economics, I have helped, and I worked with Mike a few times and look forward to working with him in the future. Maybe not in my role as on the foundation, but maybe in other ways. So it's a terrific place that we're going right now. I mean, I completely agree with Mike about the fact that the NGOs and the council and the staff all seem to be moving in lockstep in the same direction. And it's such a wonderful time to be here. And I just wanted to express all of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Allison?
Hello, everyone. So I wanted to talk tonight about the food truck vendor program. Several of you may know that I had a hot dog cart several years ago. Had some issues with the town trying to get it to work correctly for me. So I just want to kind of make sure that we do our vendors correctly. And in doing so, Mike kind of stole the thunder and the whole courtyard thing that I was going to kind of do. But his enthusiasm is definitely needed for that type of environment. I've gone to, not necessarily Belize, but St. John and St. Thomas, and a lot of those places do have those food court type vendors. Even in Florida, I've been to several of those, and it's certainly a atmosphere that's contagious. A lot of music, and if Raj can come down with the Indian place, I'll be there every day. So I think it's a benefit if we do a courtyard type atmosphere, especially down the town hill. But one thing I do think we should look into as well is the branch out of all commercial areas, even on like private properties. Maybe at the old shopping center where people can set up to do small vending type things that may not necessarily want to just set up at the boardwalk all year long. I'm sure we could talk to Lloyd and see what kind of options they would have for that in the back corner behind the Mexican restaurant that we have now. There's several different areas in town that could utilize those type of things. And I was part of Vendors United, which was a across the United States program that, basically you would talk to whoever vendors in different areas and try to help you build your business and stuff like that. Food trucks bring in a lot of business, necessarily tourism type things, but it also helps our brick and mortar buildings, because you get these people that come down for said UFO truck or any of these other kind of trucks that may not have come here before because of the truck. And then notice that we have a Mexican restaurant or the Indian place or anything else like that. That generates more revenue for the town, because then they come back for more and more things. And then they find out that there's a bed and breakfast, and then they find out there's an Airbnb. It just kind of trickles down to, basically helping all of Clayton Beach. So I am for the courtyard. I am for expansion, which that could be further discussed later on down the road. But just wanted to share my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I had signed up. Is there anybody else? Okay.
Mayor Schiff?
Yeah.
I see a representative to Westmoreland Board of Supervisors is here. I was just gonna see if you had anything to share. He wasn't on the agenda.
Sure, I think we put him on the regular meeting though too, because then it's after his meeting in the county. But if you have, do you have anything you'd like? No, this was no. I saw you cutting the tree down back there and I thought it was Jason, by the way. Was that you or Jason in the photo?
I didn't hear what you said. Well, it was kind of stopped up, but I
Oh.
did hear Dr. Sullivan say my name. So,
She asked if you had anything you wanted to
Oh.
add.
well, I will say a couple of things if that's okay.
Sure, go. please.
First of all, Mike's presentation was very impressive. And I hope that maybe you'll give him an opportunity to speak at the regular council meeting and present maybe a smaller version of what he was talking about, because it's extremely important. And so many people have talked about those things for a long time, but nobody's ever taken the initiative to implement them. So I commend him for doing that and his group that's doing that, because it will bring great things to Colonial Beach, I believe. I was going to say something at the next meeting about Mike Cambry. Gosh, what an awesome guy. I've enjoyed working with him so much. Professional in every way, always helpful. We've been at several meetings together, outside of council, and it's unfortunate his circumstances, and we can only pray the best for him and his family. And then I know you're going to have the challenge of replacing him, and hopefully you'll get somebody as enthusiastic and professional as he was and is, and I think that'll help a lot. I did want to say, and I sent you an email, and I think maybe everybody got it. I hope that the fact that I contacted the county administrator last week to find out what the story is with the assessments, because I hate coming here and giving you information and it not be accurate. We thought, and he thought, that we were going to all have the assessments by the middle of December. Supposedly somebody that works with the Bright system has been on leave all through the holidays and wasn't available to provide Pearson, who's actually doing the assessments, the information that they needed. And this is secondhand information. So this is what I'm being told, just so you know. But Norm said that he contacted Pearson right after I called him, and they said their goal is to have them by the middle of January. So I wouldn't take that to the bank. But I think it's, at least we know why they're not there. And I have had some people contact me and ask me if I know anything about them. So, and that's all I can tell you about it. Any questions about anything from the county or anything for the new year that I need to carry down there? I think we're still working on water and sewer issues to try to resolve those. And I think that should be an ultimate goal of this council and the county to come together and figure out how we can resolve those issues. I know it's a legal matter, so we're not talking about it much in public, but I think it's something that hopefully will be resolved this year. So it'll help everybody involved. And the goal is from day one that I've been on the board is to work together with the council and the county. And I think we've done a good job of that and promoting that. And hopefully they have a different opinion of who we are and what we are. And groups like Mike's and the one that Mr. Nelson is involved in is just, it's so awesome. And it just really promotes our town in a great way. Any questions from anybody? Perfect. Thank you. Happy New Year.
All right, we'll move forward to our unfortunate new business, which is the exception of the resignation of council member Cambry. Before we do the motion and second, I just wanted to correct that the resignation of his seat will result in an appointment to the seat, but only to the special election, in which at the time of the special election, similar to Mr. Williams, the person would take the seat after being qualified from the election. So not the 1st of January, but rather after the qualification of the election. And that was some confusion between Vivian and I, because I thought I had asked Vivian that specific question, and I thought her response was, no, everything is moved to January 1st, but I think she was still talking about the regular elections and not really understood that I was asking about the special election. So that's been clarified since. That's the logistics of this, of the accepting of his resignation. But he really will be sorely missed. I was really looking forward to serving with him for 4 years, and it's been an honor to work alongside him, not just at the council level, but at the planning commission level and in many other town efforts. He was extremely involved in the coordination and implementation of the Guadalupe Free Clinic vaccination efforts, which he did not have to do. He volunteered and stepped into that. I mean, when we first started coordinating with the Guadalupe Clinic with Lance Carrington, and it was all volunteer anyway. I'll be honest with you, it was a little concerning because nobody knew at that time what to do or how to handle this. It was a lot of confusion. It was a lot of, we're just going to do the best we can. There weren't specific clear guidance all the time, and there wasn't, and other places weren't doing that yet. We were so far ahead of other communities to have that initiative to vaccinate our community like that. I mean, the county was weeks behind us really in doing large scale vaccinations. Their school did not, their school staff, faculty didn't get vaccinated for, a couple of weeks after we had already vaccinated fully our school staff. And Mike Avery said, I've done this, I can do this, I know how to organize this, I can help here. He went and got certified, right, through the MRC. He ran other vaccination clinics. He came back with experience, knowledge, know-how, and all of the military leadership that you would expect. And it was a testament really to what a great service provider is. You have MLK Day coming up, and we're talking about a day of service. And I think Avery demonstrates that in his life and has throughout his career. I was very fortunate the town of Colonial Beach could benefit from his presence here. And so great that we attract people like that, because we attract so many people really that have lives dedicated to service. And we continue to. So anyway, with that, I want to just thank Mike again. I don't know if he's tuning in or not from, I think, Connecticut. That sounds like an awful place, Mike. Come back. Okay. It sounds much colder. I know it's 22 degrees here right now, but it sounds much colder in Connecticut. And so anyway, he will always have a place here in Colonial Beach. So anytime he would like to, I think he would be welcomed with open arms by our entire community. So with that, I will take a motion on resolution 0122, the resignation of Councilmember Avery. So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, so it's a roll call vote on this one. Ms. Brett?
Aye.
Longcure?
Aye.
Robertson?
Aye.
Dr. Sullivan?
Aye.
Williams?
Aye.
And I don't know, he's not allowed to leave. All right. And so we move forward. Next is the election of the vice mayor. We have a couple, this is obviously our first work session in January, so we have things to establish in the beginning of the year, like our work sessions, regular meetings, bylaws, and rules of procedure. And so with that, I have an election of vice mayor. I would like to nominate Ms. Robertson if she is so interested.
Yes.
Is there any other?
Second.
Second. Is there any other nomination? All in favor?
Somebody can do it.
Aye.
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 Well, you got it. Ms. Roberts.
Thank you.
If you give me my right hand, I'd be my, yeah, that was your pen.
Yeah, really. Nuh-uh.
It does not double anybody's
No, it
pay, just
doesn't.
in case somebody online thinks that that is a thing.
That's Mr. Monticello's humor.
Okay, and next up is the liaison assignments. I'm actually going to, request a pass on this. This is one of the few things the mayor, actually has control over is, these liaison assignments. And because I want to discuss the bylaws, and so I just want to talk about that for a second. I want to discuss the bylaws and the liaisons and the bylaws about, separating out a couple of things. It says economic development and Department of Planning and Zoning. And I think this economic development is growing, and if it is a vision to grow it to a commission, then maybe it should have its own bullet point. And of course, now we have a Parks and Rec department, which we did not have before. And so I would just ask to pass on the liaison assignments for the work session and to do the official assignments at the regular meeting. That way we can discuss the bylaw change first, and also hopefully have an appointment to the seventh seat and kind of, make it all pretty and tidy at one meeting. So for right now, your liaison position still continue. You're not absolved of your assignments. Just keep as is. All right, next is the resolution to establish the town council meeting schedule. I would like to point out that there are a couple meetings. We're still on the first and third Wednesday of every month, which doesn't have really hardly any conflicts. But I do want to point out that the July 6th meeting is directly after the July 4th holiday. And that has in the past tended to be very difficult for staff and for the town to actually have any sort of substance in the meeting, because the holiday is it is the largest holiday that we do here in Columbia Beach. And so it's a little bit nice to have a reprieve. So I was gonna suggest canceling the July 6th work session. Now have it.
I'm with them.
Yeah, fair with that.
I don't have any problem with that.
Okay, all right. It kind of has happened naturally anyway, but I think if the staff can expect that it's going to not happen, then that makes it easier for them to plan as they have to get agendas together.
And Mayor,
Yeah,
if we needed one, we could do it the next week. I realize that would conflict with school board, but we can certainly work something out.
absolutely. If the need arises for a meeting at any time, we can call a special meeting and have a work session at any time. This is just to set the year, the annual expectation for staff, mostly in the community. But I think if we think that will be difficult, which it has proven to be in the past, then I'd just rather go ahead and clarify it now, rather than, everybody stress out whether or not it's gonna happen until the last minute. That never happens.
Are you looking at me for comments?
I don't know, you're looking at me, so I'm looking at you.
Let me pose an observation at this point, which may be more relevant if we take up the bylaws, but we have occasionally taken up non-administrative matters during work sessions. And I've been at this a year, and the only real distinction I've been able to come up with between a work session and a regular session is a work session, we don't have the pledge and a moment of silence. So if there's an artful distinction between the two, I'd be delighted for you to explain it to me.
Yeah, I remember when this dynamic got written and added into the bylaws. It was under Mike, oh my gosh, what was it? No, not Ham. The other Mike Mike Looney. And I think the concept was always, well, we would discuss things at work sessions and then vote on them at the regular meetings, but things come up, business has to happen and has these deadlines that I think, what has it been, 8 years since he was on council? It seems to function, things just don't function that way. It seems nice in theory, but it's not necessarily function that way. So if you'd like to have the Pledge of Allegiance at every meeting, we can do that.
Well, it strikes me as a distinction to some level without a difference.
Yeah, I still try to, when possible, to have the work session have more presentation, more discussion. Like even tonight, we're not going to approve the bylaws and rules of procedures. We're just going to talk about it, and then at the regular council meeting, we'll approve that.
Mr. Moncur, if I may, regular meetings are a statutory requirement. But as a practical matter, I mean, again, to your point about the distinction with the difference, but there is a statutory requirement to have a certain number of regular meetings during the course of the year. So by identifying at least some of your meetings as regular meetings, that meets that statutory requirement.
So it is a distinction with a difference.
Yeah, it really, yes, it is. That you're correct. But you could also eliminate the nomenclature and just have meetings, and those would probably all just qualify whether they're regular or, I mean, in other words, you could eliminate the distinction of just call all of them meetings, and you'd probably still fine as far as meeting your statutory requirement. But that I think is probably one of the larger reasons why people, localities identify some as regular meetings and others as something different.
Okay. Makes sense. Well, do I have before we get into bylaws and rules of procedure, do you want to have a motion for the resolution 02/2022? The meeting, the meeting dates.
I move we approve the meeting dates as amended, deleting the July 6th work session.
Second. Is there any further discussion to that? Can I do it all in favor on this one, Vivian? I lost her.
Yes.
Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, discussion for review of bylaws and rules of procedure. So I had already touched on the only bylaw change Stark had noted out, which was that under those liaisons, I think there's an interest to separate out economic development and the planning department as two separate assignments. It may end up that the same person does them both. Obviously, we all wear multiple hats, and we all, and can and should be involved in every aspect of it. But that way it has its own place. And then also the Parks and Rec department just added that in.
So moved, or we don't need to because we're not doing it tonight.
Yeah, it's just
So,
discussion
yeah,
for tonight. Is there any other discussion?
Yeah. I did have a question about putting something on the agenda. As a new council member, I wasn't really sure how that worked, and I spoke with Ms. Adams Jacobs, and she said that it requires 2 council members to get something placed on the agenda. So maybe we should clarify that in our bylaws.
I think that is on our bylaws, but I don't have to look at this section.
It says council members may, it's page 7, section 5-1, letter B. Says council members may request that items be placed on the agenda of a work session for discussion. by contacting the town manager or town clerk at least 8 business days prior to a work session. No such item shall be removed without consent of the requesting council member.
Hmm.
So it says the member, but then it says council members may request. So I just want to clarify, does it take 2 council members to put something on agenda? If it does, I think we should clarify that. So it's just the language.
So we should put members in D and then clarify that it's 2.
Can we ask Vivian maybe for a?
Oh, yeah.
For a.
I don't
room
think-
on it?
I don't think we've required that before, though. To put an item on a work session, a single council member can ask for an item to be on a work session. To call a special meeting requires either
Oh,
the
you're right,
mayor or
Karen.
2.
Yes.
To call
I
a
think-
special meeting
I think I
requires
was
either the
confusing that
mayor or
too.
2 council members, yeah. I mean, I've asked for stuff and I've never been asked to have somebody else support it.
I've had, go ahead, Vivian.
I was going to concur, this is really a matter of, how, whatever procedure, you want to follow.
Well, and I think so. We can look more at that too. I mean, that's part of why we don't have to adopt these tonight. That's a good
I
point.
mean, there've been times when I've been asked, I say, can it wait till the next session, right? Because we're so overloaded and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So I mean, as long as council members are reasonable, I think, I don't see why it would need 2 members, but
So I think for some clarity, maybe the distinction is the fact that both the mayor and I ultimately have approval over the agenda. So in terms of a request, you would need to ultimately run it through those channels. So as part of council, the mayor is also part of council. So as long as either a council member, along with the blessing of the mayor for the approval of the agenda, along with myself, is how the process formally works.
That makes sense to me. And maybe I see David's point though, that it's not really that clear there about that process. So maybe we can rewrite that paragraph to be more clear. B, yeah, we'll work on some draft language before the next meeting for that.
Okay.
I'll say I have worked in some localities where a formal document as a council consideration request that did require 1 council member, another council member, then approval by the mayor to get on the agenda. So it is it is a possibility.
That sounds like a lot of bureaucracy. All right.
But for staff time to work.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, that's a good point. Is there any other discussion on that point? Okay. Oh, Mr. Duke. You've had a pep talk before coming up here tonight.
Did we close our discussion on the?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Did you have something else that you wanted to?
Well, I was just wondering, I do agree with Mr. Monk here earlier. He was talking about the distinction between work sessions and regular meetings. And I know there's some language in here, I forget exactly where it is. But I was just wondering if we could word it so that something should be on the I talked to somebody who used to be on council, and they said that every work session, they would discuss the items, and then at the regular meeting, they would vote on. So there was, a recent discussion. Part of my concern is that sometimes we talk about things 6 months earlier, and then all of a sudden it's on a work session or a regular meeting agenda to vote on. And I don't think that's necessarily fair for the people to have, an advance warning. So I just thought if it's possible, could we put things on the previous work session, even if it's a quick discussion, so that it's fresh on all of our minds, including the citizens?
I think that's, part of that is just a note to the town manager and myself that we make sure that we are putting them on work sessions prior to, but when possible, that's always best practice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is maybe part of this discussion, I've also heard some feedback on the length of meetings. Maybe if we are going to be rehashing some of these things before, is there any interest in a consent agenda in addition to your agenda for some of the items that we have discussed before? Because there will be some things that are just normal run of the mill government that can be attached to an agenda item, minutes, some just housekeeping items that we would not have to take time at meetings to take time to rehash if we are going to be bringing back every item from a work session back to the next regular meeting. I'm just trying to be cognizant of the hours and the amount of time and the workload that we have to get through in the next year. So if that's also a potential consideration, I think that might be something worth discussing.
Okay, yeah, and I definitely wasn't trying to add any layers of bureaucracy. My main thing is just, something's like discussed 6 months prior, and then it's all of a sudden on a work session or on a regular meeting. That would be something I would think would maybe be appropriate to discuss prior to the regular.
I think that there are some levels of appropriateness to that, but at some point, we're also having the same work, we're doing the same work 3 times, which becomes inefficient for staff. So I think we need to be aware of the workload and the staff that staff already have on a normal day-to-day versus continue to bring items back and back. At some point, there will have to be decisions to be made.
What
So I think
concerns me
this-
about a consent agenda, and I understand where you're going with that, and I agree with you, if this was especially maybe a larger community or a board of directors for a corporation, I think that's the way business would be done. But I almost worry that a consent agenda would make it look like we're not appropriately outlining and having that opportunity to discuss each item, even though we would know it's because we worked on it and because it's run of the mill. I'm just concerned about people that aren't familiar with consent agendas and how that may.
I would say yes, but also any item that potentially would need to be addressed, or if there was a question about it, could be pulled from consent. So there are things that are just normal run of the mill that sometimes we've brought back 2 and 3 times, could be on a consent agenda, as long as that information is in the packet and available to the public. And that's just for efficiency's sake. But
What do you think, Tom?
I like the idea of the consent agenda.
You like it?
Yes.
You're gonna pull stuff from it. I'm looking forward to it.
I don't fully understand what a consent agenda is, so maybe.
It helps for reference. I'm not aware of other localities that do not have a consent agenda.
Vivian, thank you for chiming in.
I'm sorry, but it just to Ms. Adams Jacobs' point, it is truly just your regular payment of bills, just the normal things that are very routine, but they are set forth in detail. But I mean, that doesn't mean at all that you have to do it, but just, I think it's often, I try to share from around the state what others do. And it is just the most routine and basic of items that recur literally every month.
So is this just lumping a bunch of things together on the agenda that we would vote on as a group? Is that what a consent agenda is?
Yeah.
Correct. Yes. It is typically, it typically involves minutes, payment of bills, and then anything else that has come along that is just very standard. I'll give you an example of the moment, which will be just approval to file the paperwork with the court for the special election to fill Mr. Cabry's seat. That is just a standard item that will need to happen and be approved. But it's not abnormal in any way. It's not something, of course, that occurs every month, but it is a very routine administerial type of matter.
And oftentimes in most localities, the mayor or the chair of the board would talk about briefly what is on the consent agenda, a sentence, and then it would be adopted. And in the off chance there's something that would be pulled, we would pull it then.
So one of the things that comes to mind is very often we have dealt with procuring things multiple times. And I'm thinking the last step is always the appropriation, which is like, everything else has been decided, but we have to do one more resolution to appropriate the funds. Would that be the kind of thing that might be on a consent agenda?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And even like acceptance, like the SRO funding that we get every year, or the $5,000 fire department grant that we get every year. I mean, those are annual things that, those would be on a consent agenda.
Yes.
Do you want to try one at the next meeting?
Sure, if
There it
there's
goes.
anything to go on it.
Yeah, look at us.
So basically, that would kind of streamline some of the mundane stuff, and give us more time to discuss, like prior to a meeting, like a work session prior to a meeting, some of the more meaty things.
I think that's the concept, yeah.
Okay.
I like the two words you use, mundane and meaty.
So you have stature in this organization now, and you watch yourself.
Listen to the meeting that's gone off or.
Now, since Vicky's the vice mayor, does she get to move on this side of Robin and away from Tom?
Oh. I was gonna leave it right there, but. I think it's good for Tom, honestly, you know? All right. Okay, so we're gonna try consent agenda next meeting, and we're gonna revise the paragraph, clarify that. Maybe that'll help some things. Okay, is there anything else on the bylaws? All right, sorry to give you the false alarm, Mr. Duke. I think it is your turn now, though.
Well, I can promise you it's probably neither mundane or meaty, but we will try. An English teacher would say something like that. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Just wanted to talk to you briefly about the 2022 vendor program. Mr. Allison, who I've known forever, and Mr. Fitzpatrick have definitely stolen some of my thunder, so I preemptively thank you, gentlemen, for doing that. Next slide, Madam Clerk. Just to give you a little bit of background, in addition to the special events duties that I was given around the middle of the summer, the vendor program kind of fell into that as well. And several months ago, I had phone calls from some of our current vendors about when they could come and sign up for the 2022 season. One gentleman in particular was hoping to be there January 1st. I had to tell him that we were sadly closed on the 1st, but he could come on the 2nd. But that was before yours truly started asking questions about the prospective purchase of land on the boardwalk, where all of our vendor program resides, with the exception of one. So I realized that we needed to move pretty quickly. So in discussions with India and Nate, we've kind of tried to come up with a plan. And it's time sensitive because in addition to folks wanting to sign up, the season is hopefully right around the corner, barring any more bad weather. I'm sorry.
You know it's snowing again tomorrow, right?
Well, I hope not, for my kids' sake. I go to school. So basically, and Mr. Fitzpatrick was absolutely correct. I had a wonderful meeting several weeks ago with him and members of the chamber and members of some of the members of our current vendor community. They had some wonderful ideas. We were just trying to figure out where we're going to put these folks. Again, a little bit of background. We have 8 vendors as of this calendar year. All of them are considered what we consider a food truck or a food vendor. 2 ice cream, 2 hot dog, 2 shaved ice, 1 American, 1 Japanese. 7 are located primarily, obviously, in the boardwalk area. We have 1 at Castlewood Park. We do have an inquiry from another one of our current vendors who would like to set up at Castlewood at some point as well. And those requirements obviously are water and electric. Again, the current vendor sites that we have are all on a pending potential sale. So sometime in the next several months, there will be no place to put these folks. As I mentioned, I met with Mr. Fitzpatrick, members of the chamber, and some of the vendors to address their concerns and solicit feedback and ideas, and to come up with a long-term solution. Next slide, please. Briefly, this is a map. The green areas are current. Okay, the current green areas that you see are where our vendor programs are currently located, between the tourism center and, let's see, Willie's, and then from Willie's over to next to High Tides, between the restroom and the beach shop. The area in gold is the bottom of Town Hill that Mr. Fitzpatrick alluded to, and the purple area is what I guess we refer to as Upper Town Hill. So those are some locations that we have talked about. Next slide, please. So we are seeking your direction on how we move forward on this, because because it's time sensitive, we need a short and long-term solution. Now, I will preemptively say that after listening to Mr. Fitzpatrick and Mr. Allison, that I'm pretty excited, and you guys should have been football coaches in a previous life, because I was ready to run through a wall after listening to what they had to say. But we need to come up with something pretty quickly. So next slide, please. Okay, so these are our alternatives, excuse me. Option A would be we would place folks for the 2022 season at the Town Hill stage area. It's already got a little bit of electricity and water over there. It would create vendor spaces for the upcoming season. The cons is it would not be directly on the beach. One of the things that the vendors and Mr. Fitzpatrick and others have expressed the feeling that our vendor program is probably better as close to the central beach areas as possible. So that's one of the cons, that we'd have to walk a little bit. But I guess a pro would be for someone traveling in a car, for example, coming off of Colonial Avenue onto Washington, they would see the vendors there if we were to put them on the upper part of Town Hill. So theoretically, you would get customers from the beach and from the car traffic. Special consideration, obviously, we'd have to ensure water access, and it may disrupt special events that are being held on Town Hill. Option B is the Town Hill boardwalk side. And then we've got some fiscal impact. Those numbers are directly from the Director of Public Works, who could not be with us tonight. And keep in mind, these numbers are today's numbers due to the market stability, instability, however you want to look at it. Those numbers could be either a lot less or a lot more tomorrow. One of the pros is it is on the boardwalk, and we do have access to electric. The con, obviously, is we would need to ensure access to water, and there would have to be some type of impervious substance at the bottom of that hill, but due to drainage, it just floods out anytime there's a heavy rain at the bottom of Town Hill. And again, we need to ensure access to water. I mentioned the flooding, and again, another one that disrupts special events that we have on current Town Hill space. That's probably the case with all of our options. Option C is the one that I think most folks would like to see, because it is rather exciting, is that's the Town Hill Courtyard idea. Again, it's on the Town Hill by the boardwalk. Those costs are an estimation depending on how big we want to make that concrete pad, so to speak, that Mr. Fitzpatrick alluded to. It's a permanent solution that adds charm and promotes the town's goal to be an attractive destination for tourists and residents alike. There would be a need to have some electric down there as well as water. It's a permanent solution, but it is going to be expensive. And at the minimum, it will require some engineering, construction of the concrete pad, installation of tables, chairs, permanent access to utilities, lighting. It would look really nice, but that's the more expensive option at the moment. And again, it does flood down there, but I think having a concrete pad would solve some of that. And again, like all the others, it does disrupt special events. Option D is the month-to-month option. I don't think anybody is probably in favor of doing that. And I don't, India left just at the right time. Here she comes. Boss, would you like to, we were discussing option D, the month-to-month, the feasibility of something like that happen. Could you just maybe mention what conversations you have possibly had?
Yes, after speaking with Mr. Dodson, realistically, the month-to-month option would only be good till either May or June. based on their preliminary dates for construction.
And the month-to-month option, again, is it would allow the program to continue uninterrupted. It would be kicking the can down the road too, obviously, because we'd have to turn right around next year and have the same discussion. And then obviously the special consideration would be it's a pending land sale. So the tentative date of breaking ground is, like we've talked about, May or June. The last option, obviously, I don't think anybody wants to see ultimately that happen, is the discontinuation of the vendor program. Obviously, there would be a small fiscal impact because the direct fiscal impact is around $5,500 a year in revenue. That doesn't mean there's not more indirect or residual revenues from having the vendor program. And we're in a beach town, and people that want to go to the beach don't always want to pick up their families and go to a restaurant when they can have something within walking distance. So that, removes a seasonal amenity, again, that nobody probably wants to see go away. And then obviously we have to give consideration to the fact that the vendor program helps meet the comprehensive goal to be an attractive community. So I will turn the floor over to Nate, who helped with this project immensely, and he can go over some further things.
Good evening. So this is an evaluation criteria matrix. On the left-hand side in that first column, you have all of the options, A, B, C, D, E. Then each of those were rated on the given criteria in that top row: the cost effectiveness of each solution, the practicality of implementation, our administrative capacity to do that. It's going to involve Bobby's time, it's going to involve Public Works time. The implementation timeline of how quickly we could actually get this up and running in order to accommodate this season and then future. The overall effectiveness at meeting, the overall effectiveness at addressing the solution. And then the last column is a summary. So each of these options were rated on these criteria on a score of low, medium, or high, and they had a corresponding numeric value. Low equaled 1, 2 medium, 3 high. There's 5 categories, so there is a total score of 15 items possible. For example of this implementation timeframe, getting the vendor spaces set up at the Town Hill stage option would be quick. It's not going to take a lot of administrative staff time. Public Works could make sure that there's electricity there relatively quickly. So it was rated highly for quick implementation. Option C, the Courtyard, that's going to take a longer time frame. Probably not going to be able to get that done by June or July, or May or June when the Dotson sale goes through. So it was rated low. If you could go to the next slide, that's a summary. It shows a better summary or more clear. There we go. All of the options on the left, summary on the right. As you can see, Town Hill option A, Town Hill stage disappeared. Scored the highest with 13. The other options, B, D, and E, relatively similar. Option C, the Town Hill Courtyard option, scored the lowest. That's simply because it's going to cost the most and it's going to take the longest time to implement. So against that criteria, that's why it was scored lower. Consequently, next slide, please. We are recommending option A. Staff recommends council approve option A, have us set up the vendor program at the Town Hill stage. Any of us are happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, sounds like we got some questions. I'll start with Mr. Williams.
Yeah, did we, this is one thing I need a little clarification on. Did we sell the property between the beach shop and the bathrooms?
It's on phase 3.
So that property is sold.
Well, not yet.
Yeah, so not yet. It's a
It's under
future
contract.
phase.
Okay, so that's gonna be gone as well. So basically from the beach shop all the way to the railroad boat is gonna be sold.
Those will all be a part of phase 3.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Those will all be a part of the phase 3. So not finalized yet, but as India said, a call with Mr. Dotson earlier today.
Okay.
It's not to the riverboat, it's just to the bathrooms. It's a small lot in between there.
Okay. And also the access to, I've talked to several residents, people who've been here for many, many years. And one of the big concerns I had, well, they didn't like the option of the town by the stage, just because that's so far from the beach. But they also had a concern about how do residents like get to the bottom of Town Hill? Will there be any public access
Are you,
other than the beach? Boardwalk.
is it the Wilder lot that is right there, the parking lot? It runs right on, it borders the boardwalk, so then people could just walk down from there. Otherwise, yes, the beach, or they could walk down, Town Hill.
There's currently a sidewalk that runs from the top of Town Hill at the access road down, well. Dr. Self-Sullivan's, it's correct. It's not the best sidewalk in the world, but you can, and it's grass access. I mean, you can get down with it. We explored a lot of different options that aren't listed here. For example, we really wanted to do our due diligence in trying to keep it close to the central beach area as we possibly could. And we just couldn't come up with any options as to where we could put it. I think for the 2022 season, I think this is probably the best bet to make sure that we have a vibrant vendor program. And then as we discuss the long-term planning, obviously, the sky's the limit, but I think we really did try and find a way to keep it as close to the beach as we possibly could.
Okay, so there won't be any parking, that direct parking. Have you done any research? I like what Mike Fitzpatrick said earlier, but in any of your research, have you found any communities where there was no parking to such like the proposal, the courtyard, where there's no direct parking, where people would have to walk maybe 1,000 feet or 2,000 feet to get to it?
No, there's nothing that I found as far as the courtyard idea was pretty unique. The first time I'd heard about it really was through Mr. Fitzpatrick, and I think it's a great idea. The parking, I don't need to talk about parking because you folks have to deal with that at some point, but the idea, for example, of using the upper part of the Wilder lot was an idea. Maybe we could block off a couple of spaces, for example. That could be where our vendor program is located, but it really wasn't, quite frankly, big enough. And you'd still have to spend a lot of money running water and electric across that parking lot. You'd lose a couple parking spaces for the season. And it's once again kicking the can down the road, because with the impending sale of the Wilder lot through the Dawson development, we'd have to start over again.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
So
sir.
one last question, because since you mentioned Castlewood, I sent you some information. I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at it or not.
Correct.
Castlewood is zoned R2 residential. It has been forever. And you proposed putting another food cart on there. And I looked at Article 27. It was never amended to allow food carts. Have you done any research on that to justify actually allowing food carts in residential
Well,
areas?
just to set the record straight, I'm not advocating that we put another one up there. There's a vendor who currently would like to be up there if the town allowed him to. I think that was a planning commission issue that may have been taken up through the emails that I saw from you with your input, and maybe India could shed a little bit more light, but I don't know the answer to
I can clarify that.
the zoning question.
Sure. I remember when the whole push for the vendor program was to expand, and it was pretty recently. It was in the last few years when Quinn was here, and basically the vendor programs on the boardwalk, the spaces were getting filled up, and there was more need to expand it. And they also wanted to enhance amenities, at Castlewood and around town. And so the town code was amended, not the zoning ordinance, because the zoning ordinance allows in R2 for parks and public facilities. So that's what this is under. It's a park and public facility. As long as it's owned by the municipality, we can put all kinds of amenities on things, and it's correct under the zoning ordinance. It's not a brick and mortar restaurant. It's again still something that's removable, right? So, but regardless, even if it was brick and mortar and it's not a restaurant, it's still a park. It's a park and public facility. And so that's why it doesn't violate the zoning ordinance. But in the town code, it was amended to allow the vendor program not just to be specific to the boardwalk, but to allow the vendor program on any town-owned parcel. And that was really done, I mean, very intently with a lot of purpose to allow for vendors to go to Castlewood and allow for vendors to maybe go to 700 Colonial Avenue. At the time, it was a thought that, as it was mentioned, I think Mr. Allison maybe mentioned, that there could be some interest at the Rankin Shopping Center or along Colonial Avenue, or in the winter months when the boardwalk was not vibrant, to have these food trucks may want to be somewhere more in C1, more in that area. And so by changing the language in the town code, the vendor program is a town code thing, not a zoning code, then it allowed food trucks to be put at 700 Colonial Avenue as well, or any town-owned parcel, period. And we also own, you know, that little lot that's on the diagonal, you know, North Irving. I'm not saying that's a great place to put food trucks, okay? I'm just saying
The clock slot?
the clock slot. And I'm not advocating for that necessarily or anything like that. I'm just saying that that was the intent behind that change. Because I remember when it happened. I don't know if I was on council. I think I might have been in the audience when it happened.
We had considered the areas on North Irving between the town pier and the town restroom, for example.
Yeah.
But there again, you're eliminating quite a bit of parking, and there's an awful lot of foot traffic that would be mixed with, you know, vehicle traffic as well. So the safety aspect of it was a concern. And then, of course, you'd have to add water and electric to those areas as well.
I'd just like to disagree with the fact that food carts are allowed in residential. I just want to go on the record for that. When resolution 1919, I believe, is what you're talking about, and that allowed for zoning changes for the different articles. Article, I think it was 7, 8, 9, something like that.
That's
6.
not what I'm talking about.
You're not talking about that resolution to
No.
allow food carts and
The 1919 resolution. is
public
not-
right of ways. It was to allow food carts in public right of ways.
I know, that was to address that people wanted to have food carts on the street. That's why that was changed. This was before.
So our parks, we are allowed to put them in our public parks. So Torrey Smith, Washington Park.
Correct. And there have been, there's been a hot dog stand at Torrey Smith a couple occasions, actually.
Yeah, we had one for
Yeah, at
National Night
Eleanor
Out.
too, yeah. I mean, we haven't had one in
So should
Eleanor,
we-
but I would say that would be fine.
I think that would be a great public discussion to let the citizens actually hear that too. That would be, you know, beneficial to all of us.
Again, I'm not saying I'm advocating one way or the other, I'm just saying that's the way that was the intent of changing that ordinance. Was to give it flexibility to the program because it was expanding and we were trying to prepare for it and encourage it. The town was doing that. All right, well, I have to say my comments on this are that I know that you did this nice spreadsheet and everything, but my vote would be for option B. Because I think ultimately, this courtyard idea is fantastic. And I think that we should start preparing in that direction. And that option B is the most feasible in the amount of time.
I know that's not in the form of a motion, but I second it.
Yeah,
Are we still in the
we're still
asking
discussing.
questions phase?
Mhm.
Okay.
I just thought I'd throw it out there.
If I could ask, when you're recommending, the recommendation is for, staff recommendation is for option A, that's for this year, right?
Yes, ma'am. That was
is
for the
not
20
That is not an intent to do that long-term, but so that we could immediately start signing those leases and know that we had a place for them, they know where they would be.
Yes, ma'am. I think the impending sale of the Dodson, or the purchase of the Dodson land makes this a little bit time sensitive, and I don't hold the purse strings if you say, you know, it's ultimately up to you as to the type of investment that you want to make. Having said that, I think option A would probably be the most fiscally responsible for the 2022 season, because we don't want to lose that amenity. But I think in the long-term planning, The mayor's actually, I mean, if I could just take off my department head hat and say, as John Q. Citizen, I like that idea as well, but it's not up to me. It's, we're looking to you for direction, and I think we came up with the one that's probably the most affordable and satisfies the time sensitivity of it.
When we sign these leases, are they for the fiscal year? Are they January? When do they start?
The
people are
calendar year.
asking.
The calendar year technically, so theoretically,
So theoretically, they're there unless they need to move because Dotson starts developing, right? They're where they are now.
correct.
And so this would be, we're starting in July 1st, provided they don't have to.
They
move
go
before then.
January to December.
No, technically nobody is operating right now because we have this issue before you folks. But theoretically, they would have to, if there's someone who has a food truck or a cart on Mr. Dodson's future property, they have to move it. Because I can't sign a lease agreement with property that doesn't belong to the town.
Okay. So these leases are January through December.
Yes, ma'am.
How long would it take to get option B? I mean, we see a cost, but then there's a time factor.
I would say that option B would be, we would have more than enough time to probably get that done before the spring started. It wouldn't be tomorrow, but I think we could move pretty quickly on something like that. The issue of option B is we got some prices on some bluestone, for example, because the area down there needs to be somewhat impervious because of the flooding. I think Mr. Fitzpatrick's idea and what we discussed at great length is the dream that I think a lot of folks would like to see. It would look great and it would be a draw for tourists and residents alike. And I think there's going to be probably some engineering and some environmental studies that would have to go into that first. But I think the idea of option B is certainly something you folks can think about and probably something that we could do relatively quickly. But I don't know. I was hoping Rob would be here because he's been my go-to person on a lot of these questions, but I think that's certainly a possibility for this season.
Having stepped on that property when it's soaking wet and going down to my ankles, I don't know how much bluestone and how much is going to be needed there, what the engineering is to make that stable enough for food trucks. Has that been looked into, do you think, or?
No, ma'am. I think that was just an option that I talked to Mr. Murphy about, because I think that would be the next best thing. We would have to have some way for those folks to be able to park these food trucks and trailers, because again, if it rains for a couple days straight, they're not going to be able to pull those things out of there. And it would probably do a lot of damage to the bottom of Town Hill as well.
If you went with that option, is it possible to have parking at the top of the bottom of Town Hill like we do sometimes now for festivals?
To my knowledge, there's no parking signs or anything like that. I mean, theoretically, if you have a golf cart with a town sticker, you could pull up as close as you wanted to it. If you wanted to make the trek down that hill and it's not too muddy, you could probably get down there relatively easy. Folks in cars would have to walk a little bit of a way, but or they could park at the riverboat or.
Yeah, I know for some festivals, people, the hard pack that goes from Colonial Avenue into the riverboat parking lot, that hard pack road.
Well, that was one of the reasons
on the other side, people will park there.
Correct. Well, that was, believe it or not, some of the spots we were considering using for option A, because it's kind of like if you come down that little access road off of Washington Avenue towards the town stage, for example, it's perfect spots for vendors to set up and locate. You could probably fit 7 or 8 in there by themselves.
So option A is not just exclusively right there next to the stage?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
It is.
Yes, ma'am. And that would be the quickest fix for the 2022 season, because there's already established electricity. We'd have to run some water over there towards those.
And just any other comments on vendors down at Castlewood? I know there's been a query for somebody down there. just going back and forth in that area almost every day, because I have a boat down at the yacht center. It seems like to me that we may be capturing, we may have people spending money there that otherwise wouldn't spend money in town, because that's where the boat ramp is. And that's that area is hugely impacted by beachgoers.
Mhm.
And so from an economic standpoint, it makes sense to have a couple of vendors down there. Otherwise, those people may come into town and leave and not spend a dime.
That's true. As I said, there was one vendor in particular in our meeting who expressed an interest about being at Castlewood.
Was it a bait and tackle shop?
No, ma'am,
Oh, okay.
No.
Because I feel like a bait and tackle shop would go really well.
probably, but I think that the person that expressed an interest at being in Castlewood would be the perfect vendor for Castlewood.
And do you know if I know that there had been a proposed drawing for doing some work at Castlewood that was actually moving the vendors further away from the playground and more towards that street that cuts across there at Lunsford Point Park. Is there water I guess water and electricity on that side of the park, or would that require infrastructure?
I would have to plead ignorance because I don't know the answer to that question. I was hoping, again, Mr. Murphy would have been here, but he would be able to answer that question if you wanted to follow up with him. I've heard the same things you have, but I don't know any of the details.
Yeah, I think if Rob was.
Peanut Gallery said power yes, water no.
Was that?
I said the peanut gallery said that there's power but no water.
Yes,
So
I think that is true, but I think both are capable.
probably yes.
Yes.
Any of these scenarios are going to require some sort of work by our public works department to get those types of utilities
And the
to.
Castlewood improvements of moving the vendors further away from the residential area actually was part of why they're supposed to move further towards the boat ramp. We've already allocated money to that, so that's going to happen. I think, honestly, it's frustrating that it's taken this long. But Mr. Murphy's not here, so I will attack him in his absence.
And do we have, so it's either way, option A or B for the short term is going to cost money. Do we have money to do that? Is it in a discretionary fund somewhere, or where is it going to come from?
So option A, we would be able to absorb that with either between the Public Works Department or through my contingency. If we start talking about option B, I think we would maybe have to explore other options, and the same with option C. Although I will say it would be good to know and get some feedback on option C. I like the Courtyard idea. As we begin to think about our CIP and what some of the needs will be long-term, if that's something that you all come to a consensus on today that you want to work towards potentially, then that's something we'll consider and start to look at a little bit more closely if that's where we eventually want to get to. From a placemaking perspective and economic development, I definitely see the value of having a more permanent solution. But I think we also maybe need to think about what that does to that space at the bottom of Town Hill. And then if we want to invest in that long term, I know through Bobby's work with working with some of the vendors, they have mentioned that they would be willing to pay more than the $750 for the fee. So I mean, just some short math based on the rough estimates that Rob did, if we were to have 10 spaces and the fee was doubled to about $1,500 in 10 years, it would pay for itself. So if we're thinking about the long-term solutions here, and what the impact is today, while that cost is high, the long-term solution, if that's something you all want to include and consider as part of the CIP package, then we can look into that.
So, and to add to this Courtyard conversation, there is a USDA grant for farmers markets that are as a pavilion, and localities are using the grant to create pavilions, concrete stages, event space, but a farmer's market under that realm. I will tell you though that $50,000 to $150,000 budget is laughable. Really is about $300,000 to $400,000. So if you want to be realistic about that.
Yeah, we really didn't know, we were just kind of flying blind to the actual size of this potential courtyard for bid, because right now we have about 6 or 7 vendors, 8 at the most. But through the discussions with Mr. Fitzpatrick and the vendors, we thought, well, let's think a little bit bigger, because what if we expand to 15 vendors, or we do offer amenities such as benches and picnic tables and lighting and things of that nature. That could be a year-round, week-long thing, as opposed to just accommodating our seasonal vendors.
Yeah. But I think building it in the floodplain, while not impossible at all, in fact, pavilions are built in floodplains. It's one of the most ideal locations to build that type of structure sometimes. I just think that that's really low, but I think we can run water and electric down there for 15 grand. I think that option B, that's probably in a realm of at least starting to set up placemaking there. And I understand that some events use the bottom of Town Hill. I want to clarify, very few events use the very bottom of Town Hill. Very few. In fact, I think maybe they say I'm going to say 3. I'm going to say when we have the carnival, they do use it. However, we have arranged for the carnival to be set up differently. And I do think the carnival could still come and be arranged and accommodate that. Number 2 is of course, Bike Fest, which I think the stage could just move closer and not be as far out. And number 3 is the car show. The car show uses it, and they probably use it most effectively, actually, more than anybody else. But the car show could also, maybe we can work with Riverboat and expand that, or the Legion, and have an accessory, additional.
And there's the new show, the new thing that's coming from Fredericksburg that we've had second year this year. They were down there on that bottom of the hill. What's the name of that organization?
The Fredericksburg Fallen Heroes does a barbecue, a very successful barbecue competition. I mean, they signed up literally the day after they left town. They were so excited about the reception that they got. That would be impacted as well. But, if we put it at the top of Town Hill, for example, next to the stage, that is going to, and again, I sound like a broken record, all the special considerations clearly state that special events are going to be affected by wherever we put these folks.
Yeah.
So we have to think a little more long-term, and it's not going to take up the entire part of Town Hill, for example. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, I just think it will impact more events at the top than at the bottom. And as Tom has walked the boardwalk so many times, more times than I have, people want to see a food truck on the boardwalk.
Well, I think the easy way out, let's be honest, would have been just to get rid of the program, because we didn't have anywhere to put them. But I don't think anybody really truly wants that. I think it provides an amenity to beachgoers in particular that don't, like I said, don't pick up their equipment and their umbrellas and towels and take their kids to a sit-down restaurant. So.
Okay, well, I said, open, anybody else have any more discussion?
No, my only other thought was take a couple spaces near the old bathrooms there. And, you could spread the food trucks out for this year, the vendors out for this year, kind of like they are now, where if you had a space, move it, in other words, it would move it further down Irving. And if you took, because I'm assuming there's water and electricity next to those old bathrooms.
Are you talking about what folks consider North Irving between the town pier and the old restrooms? Relocating some
there or on the other side of the old restrooms.
We had thought about that idea, but we were certainly concerned about mixing a lot of foot traffic with the inevitable car traffic that goes down that way as well. And you would still have to run some electricity somewhere, and that's certainly an option we could look at as well. But again, you're kind of cutting off parking, so.
Yes, Mr. Manager, keeps looking under. Yeah.
Well, option B strikes me as the best way to get started on this. Assuming they would budget, see what happens, see where it goes, and build on that. I mean, I think the option C is a good idea in the long run, but let's kick it into gear this summer and see where we go.
The boss tells me what to do and we'll get to work.
So just to clarify, we will move forward with, I think, amending the application for an end date of June. And then proceed with option B so that at least they can get started for the season, and we'll plan accordingly for everything else for option B.
In other words, you can sign the vendor agreement when they can be where they are now until the end of June.
Yes. And
And
we
then
will have
let them
language
know
that
that-
says either, depending on the closing date, it will either be May or June, but we will give a 30-day notice, just like some other agreements. And then we will work forward or move forward with option B as quickly as possible. And then we'll keep folks abreast if there's any slippage in timelines or cost projections for option B.
So does this need to be any sort of a resolution? Should it be on the
No,
next
it's
meeting?
just
Or we just
consensus.
move for consensus?
Yeah,
Sense of council.
is there consensus of council?
Yes.
Okay, to move forward with an India proposed. Okay.
I did have one more question about the program itself. I believe it's $750 a year, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And they only get electricity, correct?
Correct.
They don't get water or trash pickup.
No, sorry, they're responsible for,
Okay. I noticed the one in Castlewood has 4 public works trash cans, so I was trying to figure out. But
They-
when I read the resolution, they're responsible for their own trash and water. So I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
And so the $750, if you amend the contract, would you have to cut that price in half, or? You said because of the getting them going for the 6 months. Yeah.
I think at this point, we would keep the contract price as is. We would not charge them double because it's for a calendar year. So essentially, we're just moving their location for half the year. We would not be changing any fees at this time. Although if we move towards a more Courtyard version, I think we will have to look at the fee structure so that it's sustainable in the future. If we're going to make a significant investment, they all have said that the fees are relatively low for what the program is for a calendar year. And we want to be cognizant of that and make sure that we're working with our vendors so that it's not cost prohibitive, but we also want to make sure that we also have some funding for the future potential site and expansion at the boardwalk.
We don't lose any money on electricity, do we? If like a vendor is there full year, all year round?
I cannot say that we've done any extensive analysis on that to be able to prove whether or not we lose money on the program, but we can if we need to.
Anything, bro? Thought that was Vivian for a second, but it was the officer in the back. Is that you, Les? Yeah. Okay, well, there you have it.
thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you for your hard work.
All right, next up, is there a motion to go into closed meeting pursuant to code 2.2-3711A1 for discussion of prospective candidates for appointment on vacant seat on council. And pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A1, discussion of prospective candidates for employment to specific public offices, appointed positions, or employment to the town of Miami Beach, including the police department, possibly other departments.
So moved.
A second.
I'd like a division on this.
See, I knew you wouldn't do a consent. Okay, you're good. All right, we'll do the first one first. Motion to the first one.
So moved.
Do a second.
Second.
Okay, you want me to do a roll call?
Second.
You want me to roll call it? Would you like me to roll call the vote? Yeah.
We need to vote on
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Should we have a discussion first?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. It's just I've been through this before, so I was. You're absolutely right. Discussion.
I know that last year you guys all did this, and I remember Mr. Mike here argued against it, and Mr. I when he was here as well. And I fully agree with what the stance they had. Being a person who just went through this process of 5 months of campaigning, putting myself out there on social media, going to, different meetings and knocking on doors all the way through town. I'm sure Andrea can attest to this as well. It's a lot of work to become a council member, and it's a big deal. So I believe that this discussion should be out in public. I'd like to make a motion that we do that versus going in closed session. I'm not even sure how it got onto the closed session without discussion first, but I would like to move to we discuss in public.
So are you making the motion to amend the motion?
Yes.
Okay. Are we going,
You need a second.
yeah,
Well, I'll second it, but it's going to be the opposite result in the other direction, so I don't think it matters.
I know, I was just thinking, I think you just need to vote no to this motion is what you're saying. Right, okay. Is there further discussion on it? I want to say I personally don't have a lot of preference at this point about whether we discuss it in public or in private. In fact, I can see the point the other way. Just as a discussion point, because we are filling Mr. Cabry's seat, and when we had this discussion a year ago, it was indeed Mr. Cabry who felt so strongly that we do it in closed session, because he felt that people could not be their honest. You're talking about people, you're not just talking about policy, you're talking about people, and you don't want to be rude or disrespectful to that. And I think, you can talk about applicants or positions in a public manner, if you are so eloquent as Mr. Moncur is, and Mr. Williams is sometimes, but not everybody maybe is. And I remember Mr. Cabry's point on that, and also how he felt about it. And he did feel quite strongly about it. So I think in his honor, I'm gonna vote to yes, do it in closed session, because it is his seat and that is the way he felt about it. But I just wanted to clarify why and how I vote on it. Yes.
So have we stopped taking applications? Because the announcement was a little bit vague. It said we would discuss the appointment, but didn't say that we would be choosing a candidate. So have we stopped taking applications?
We have not stopped necessarily, but that's part of what to discuss in this point.
Okay.
So I'll take a motion, or I'll take a vote on this if there's no further discussion.
So there was a motion and a second. Is that what we're voting on? To not go into closed session or to go into closed session? He made a motion to amend and Tom seconded it.
I know. I think that was just confusing though.
So
To clarify, the motion as amended and voted on and seconded is to do the appointment not in closed, or is to do the discussion of prospective candidates, not in closed session.
That's correct.
Correct.
So that's what we're voting on now is the amendment.
The amendment that Mr. Williams.
So I vote nay.
Okay. Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Okay. Ms. Clement.
Nay.
Okay. Mr. Moncur.
Aye.
Nay. Okay, and I'm gonna vote nay. The same reason I just said. So now we are going to vote on the motion to go into closed session to discuss it. Okay, I'll start saying,
Aye.
okay,
Nay.
okay.
Aye.
No,
Right.
Aye.
Okay, now for the second one. We're going into closed session for 2. We have a second item also.
So moved.
All right, do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, so any discussion on this? All right, I'll start this way.
Ms. Clement?
Aye.
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 And now we're going into the session.
Can
Thank
we
you.
take a break, please?
Yeah, we can take a 5-minute break. Yeah. meeting.
So moved.
Second,
So,
all in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Okay, is there a motion to certify that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by council? I need a motion in a second.
So moved.
Okay, and this is where you each individually certify.
I so certify.
So certified.
I so certify.
so certified.
So certified.
I so certify. And is there a consensus to close applications for the prospective candidates for appointment by next Wednesday at midnight?
Yes.
Consensus law.
Consensus, great,
Yeah.
excellent. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned.